Every person has a legacy. You may not know what your impact is, and it may not be something you can write down on your tombstone, but every person has an impact on this world. It was a quote I found by Dara Horn, and today I'm delighted to have a conversation with Sara Shams, and we'll explore some struggles and stories and sparks for how she has been creating impact since our last conversation on the series 1 of the podcast. Hello, Sara.
Hello, how are you?
Really good, thank you. And I'm so pleased to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to it because it's not just visibility, that can create an impact. It's about influence and purpose behind what we do is how we create impact. And we spoke in the first series on the podcast, Embrace Your Quirks, where you shared your journey as a bilateral above knee amputee, and we learned how you've embraced your identity. But today I want to turn the page and talk about how you've been raising your profile, creating more impact in the public health area, your work as a fashion model, your work as a 2024 ambassador in the International Day of People with Disabilities, and a recipient of the Minister's Multicultural Award for the work that you've done in advocating for diverse disabled communities. So really welcome back, and it's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kerryn, for having me.
What's changed for you since we spoke 2 years ago, both personally and professionally?
First of all, I can't believe it's been 2 years since we last had a chat.
It's amazing, time's flown.
It really has, and I think a lot has happened since then, really. And I think what my goals were back then, and what I had achieved and what we had discussed, have really changed and grown from previous goals, if that makes sense. Um, so I guess professionally, what has changed is I very recently launched my own consultancy called EthnoMobility Consultancy, which and my aim for that is, helping organizations, brands, and media platforms um, authentically include and empower people with disabilities, particularly from that culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And I do that through, strategic consultancy, storytelling that's actually impactful, and representation-driven initiatives. And my aim is to guide the organizations in creating inclusive spaces, policies, and narratives that go beyond that tokenistic approach to drive that real systemic change. And all that has actually really happened based on the work that I've done leading up to this, which includes my speaking, sharing my story, and the first panel that I was on, or the interview that I was on with you in 2019, with Your Time Matters, discussing, getting the grant funding for Bridge to Brisbane, through to being on the runway, being a model, and noticing that gaps still exist within accessibility and inclusion in every space. For example, I remember a couple of years ago, I walked for a fashion month and noticed there were stairs going in and out of the change room, which I couldn't use. So we had to sort of adapt really quickly to make sure it's inclusive and accessible. That the pathway was a little bit uneven, so it would be difficult for wheelchair users, for example. So I think based on my lived experience and my lived expertise and professional expertise has led me to EthnoMobility and creating this consultancy, because I see the gaps that still exist today.
Mm. I have followed you on your social media page on Instagram, No Legs, No Worries, and you certainly have created quite a following. Was there a turning point where you realized that your visibility was becoming influential?
I think it would be, you've mentioned, I was named one of the ambassadors for International People with Disability last year. I was very honored and humbled to receive the Minister's Multicultural Award for my work within the advocacy space for people with disabilities from CALD backgrounds. I think sort of receiving those recognition, I realize that I have the power, the potential, and the platform to create those systemic changes and talk to the organizations and create those cultural shifts that we need for
Mhm.
authentic inclusion. And also, I noticed that, I've written a couple of articles for ABC Lifestyle, and I often get called to do radio interviews on the pieces that I've written. And I think that those little things that start to encourage people to think about disability, think about inclusion differently. And when I start those conversations, I can see that that's the impact that I'm having.
Mm, mm. I am delighted to follow your progress, and I think that the confidence and the courage that you have had to step out and into new spaces too is uh, inspiring. What did it take to step into that space?
It's often doing things scared because I think we're never fully confident. And I think sometimes it's okay to do it when you are unsure, but as long as you are prepared to either, you can fail and that's okay because you can learn from that, or
Mm.
you'll move on to something better and bigger from that. So I think doing it scared.
I think it is definitely about stepping out of your comfort zone and I often think, what have you got to lose? Not much, really. And what have you got to gain? Lots. So, as you say, you
Exactly.
learn about yourself all the time. So, you've spoken before about representation, especially for disabled people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Why is this? Why is that intersectional lens so important to you?
Because if we don't take that intersectional lens and look at aspects of our identity in silos, it means we are not looking at all the barriers that we face as an individual. So, for example, um, I may not be getting the same opportunity based on my disability. And we do, and we look at things with a disability lens and we put in place, we put in measures to help with that in terms of accessibility, in terms of, interpretation, whatever it is. But if you add the cultural diversity lens into it, then we need to look at the cultural aspects. What barriers exist culturally? What barriers exists within a language, for example? So if we have a resource that's disability friendly, but not culturally friendly, then people are going to fall through the cracks, for example.
Mm.
We need to take that intersectional lens to ensure that every aspect of our identity is actually being looked at and all the barriers that exist within within someone's space is also being addressed.
And whose responsibility do you think that is?
Everyone's. I think really it's everyone's responsibility because at the end of the day, if you're an employer and you are not looking at the needs of your employees, you're going to be missing out on a lot of diverse talent, but also people are not going to be feeling included and like they belong. And and I think often, and I say this, when I say everyone, it's also up to the person experiencing these issues. But sometimes we do have something called, advocacy burnout, because it's always on the shoulders of the people who are the marginalized ones who are experiencing these issues to talk about the issues continuously. And I think
Mm,
we as a population have a responsibility to be that authentic ally as well. So it's not
mm,
always on the marginalized to be rehashing and resharing their experiences.
mm. And so you mentioned when you were on the runway and the issue with stairs. Can you
Yes.
give us, some other examples of public events or spaces where people just haven't taken into consideration inclusivity?
hmm Uh, yes, if I'm invited to an event and often if I can take a step back, say there's an invitation for an event, if you look at the invitation, if it doesn't include an accessibility statement or requirement, that's the first step. And when I say that, I mean in the invite or the humanities page, whatever it is, if it doesn't say, if you have accessibility needs, please contact us or please let us know. So it will be an enjoyable event for everyone. For example, just a statement like that in the invite page, in the marketing and promotion page. And that way it will give someone like me or others with a disability who have other requirements to say, oh, this is great. I can actually email them to let them know what I need assistance with. For example, that's step one. Step two, I've attended events where, if they don't give you any information about the entrance, where the parking is, where the accessible, if there's any public transport that's available around the area, or if there's a lift on site. Because I've been to events and shoots where it's a studio that's got an upstairs um, upstairs.
Studio.
I have to go upstairs for hair and makeup, and then downstairs is where the shoot is happening, for example. And unfortunately, I think a part of it is my expectations, where I think that if a disabled model is being hired, they'd have considered these things, but it's not something that people consider readily.
Mm.
And often it's not a fault of the brand or the organization. It's more, it's not the fault they don't know, but I think we need to make more of an effort to find out this information.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
probably another example of that I've experienced. Something
Yes.
else would be, I've attended a conference and there was someone who was deaf or hard of hearing, but there was no interpreter on site. And that should have been a consideration, for example. Or there should be live captioning, something along those lines that makes the event more inclusive.
Mm. Mm. Yes, it's sort of lack of awareness, isn't it? When we focus on ourselves rather than perhaps how we could make a difference and make this better for someone else.
Definitely. It's a lack of awareness, but also a little bit of ignorance. Because I think
Mm.
if you're going to be organizing a big event like that, it is your responsibility to ensure that you do have that accessibility aspect looked at.
Mm.
But
Mm.
that's why I help events and organizers with the
I know. I
accessibility
think
of
it's a
the event.
wonderful.
Yes.
I think you're very well placed with your experience, your lived experience, but from having uh, been in such a variety of situations
Mm.
and being able to see it through your lens and to help pass on those learnings and make people aware. I think it sounds like a document you should create that people could download perhaps from you, or definitely invite you to consult on their final plans because they may have overlooked something.
Exactly.
You were recently named as an ambassador for the International Day of People with Disabilities and won the Minister's Multicultural Award. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and what did those recognitions mean to you, and how are you using them to further your mission?
Absolutely. So the International Day of People with Disability and being an ambassador for that was a fantastic experience and gave me a platform to not only share my advocacy work, but also highlight the struggles that we still face in the various areas that I work in. And that role also gave me an opportunity to have the International Day of People with Disability morning tea at Parliament House, and an event that I emceed as well, which was a fantastic experience. I absolutely love that. It was a little bit chaotic with all the federal MPs going in and out because the bell was ringing. It's the last day of Parliament of the year, and there was a lot happening. So it was a full-on MC role, but very enjoyable. And it was just fantastic to make connections with other advocates around the country as well. I think there were 8 of us all together, which was a fantastic, diverse group of people whose voices and stories were elevated through that the federal sort of platform, because it was that initiative is from the Department of Social Services federal department. So that was a really, really great role and an initiative to be a part of. And the Multicultural Ministers Award was definitely a massive surprise because I wasn't expecting to receive that award. So I was nominated, I think last year there were about 5 categories. And so I was nominated for the Diversity and Inclusion Champion category. But what happens is, out of all the 5 categories, the minister chooses one person to get the Minister's Award. from all the nominations. So I was very humbled to receive the Minister's Award for my work within this space. But honestly, for me, there were two incredible things that came out of that. Is one, the fact that I was recognized for my work as being a disabled woman of color, so that intersectionality was platformed, because so often it's always one or the other, never both. So that was incredible. And secondly, that actually gave that receiving that award and being the recipient gave me that push that I needed to launch EthnoMobility. Because prior to that, it's been something that I've been really wanting to do for the last couple of years, maybe year and a half, but I didn't have the courage. It was that being scared to take that next step that we talked about.
Mm.
Because I was sort of doing all the things that the consultancy offers, but it wasn't a full package, for the lack of a better word. And that recognition gave me the push to launch EthnoMobility, but as well as gave me that platform and connections and contacts and to build my network, because I think, like we were saying sort of earlier, we need those contacts to create those systemic changes. And often you see in the advocacy space, we are preaching to the choir. There's always the same people in the room, but we need people who are not normally in the room to come in to sit at this table that we are creating, because often we're not at those tables where decisions are made.
Yes, yes. So, how have the relationships you've built over time helped you to grow as an advocate and amplify your impact? And who do you need to add to your network?
So the relationships that I've built so far, really, they have helped me create more connections. They have given me pathways for they've given me pathways to create that positive change within organizations. And really, I think our last chat was sort of around teamwork and collaboration. And
Mm.
I can't stress how important that is, because without making those connections, we're never going to grow as people. We're not going to grow as a society. And
Mm.
and I truly believe that creating systemic change, we need to do it as a team, because
Mm.
I can't just do the talking and say this is what you need to do. We need to have that collaborative approach and that co-design approach as well to initiatives and programs that we do have, to ensure that if we're doing something particular, a particular project for example, someone with a disability, we need to ensure that we have input from someone with a disability from the start. And that's why building those relationships with people with and without disability is so important as well. And what was the second
That's
part of your question?
no, that's okay. The second part
Oh, who
was
else?
uh, uh, it was helped you grow as an advocate and amplify your impact. I think you might have covered that.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I think, I think. Um, you've worn many hats: a pharmacist, a model, a student, a public servant, a speaker. How do you stay grounded while holding space for so many identities and expectations? Because, none of the work that you're doing can you do alone. As you've just said, it, really takes sort of a team or a tribe to create change. And that can be very tiring. So how do you hold space for so many people?
I think for me, it's always going back to my goal and my, I guess, mission statement. And which is creating those inclusive systemic changes and organizations and culture. And I make sure that whoever I'm collaborating with or whoever I am wanting to create a relationship with, they also align with that.
Mm.
Because I think alignment is really, really vital to ensuring our goals and our end result is going to actually be what we both want. So I think sometimes if I'm sort of a little bit overwhelmed or unsure which path to take, I try and go back to what I want to achieve and
Mm.
take a step back and make sure that the steps that I'm looking at are actually going to get to where I want to be.
Mm. when we spoke last time, and as I say, the podcast in series 1 is Embrace Your Quirks. And you talked about as a teenage Sari, you didn't feel seen or beautiful, and you were, lacking the confidence in yourself. What would you say to her now?
Hmm. I think I would say do it scared. I think that's probably my most recent lesson learned. Adding to whatever I had said last time, I think it was different to the person I am today because I've grown from the last couple of years because I think we're continuously learning and growing. So I think that's what I
Mm,
would probably say.
mm. So, what's next, and what vision are you working towards in this new chapter of advocacy and leadership?
Next would definitely be growing EthnoMobility, being ensuring that EthnoMobility is a consultancy that comes to people's minds when they think of inclusion, diversity, and cultural awareness, and ensuring that intersectionality is addressed with every project and initiative and organization that people are working on. And definitely taking on more leadership roles. So I currently sit on the board of 2 organizations, and I'd love to be sitting on more organization and have that leadership representation because if if the change is not happening from top down, it's not going to change the culture of an organization. So for me, that's something I'd love to sort of do more of in the future.
So, before we started recording this conversation, I was asking you about your consultancy. So, for those people who weren't in on that conversation and listening, can you explain who your ideal client is and the impact that you could make on their organization?
Absolutely. So in terms of ideal client, I think that's definitely a question I get quite often. And, EthnoMobility is focused on, disability inclusion, authentic representation, and cultural safety. But in terms of a client, it's not normal just about a sector, but it's also a
Mm,
mindset. So, clients would be who are progressive and values driven. I would love to work with government, education, health, and media, because I think in all those aspects, we need that representation. Um, I'd love to work with leaders who want to build trust with culturally diverse and disabled communities and not just that box ticking. And
mm,
also for individuals or organizations who are not quite there yet and they don't know where to start. And, they want to make a change but don't know how. So for me, EthnoMobility is about creating that safe environment for us to learn, to share information, and to create belonging wherever we are.
mm. So, could you give me an imaginary case study if you were working with your ideal organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first step would be I'd definitely welcome a session with the staff. So sort of just to see where they are, particularly the leadership team. So it would be possibly a speaking engagement or a workshop on inclusivity, on intersectionality and cultural awareness, etc. And probably giving them a little checklist of what they can do within their organization as well. And then following up to see how things are going post that initial engagement. And I think depending on how much of I guess, consultancy they would want to have would be going back, looking at their policies, looking at their strategies, looking at their hiring practices, for example, to see how, where they're at with their inclusive practices but what we can improve on.
Mhm. It sounds like an audit of an organization is a really good place to start because they might think that they've got it all right, but I'm sure there would always be gaps.
Yes, exactly.
Mm. Possibly through assumption. What else would create the gap, do you think?
I think it's, there's the unconscious and conscious bias. There is the fear of getting things wrong. So not doing things because, you might get what's the word that I'm thinking of? Cancelled. There's a lot of cancel culture that we have today. So I think a lot of organizations, a lot of, particularly in media, people are scared to be cancelled. So I think that's something that I always talk about, and I always say it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from them, and you're doing it from a place of respect and kindness.
Mm. So, my mystery question for you, which comes out of a chapter in my book about vision and courage, because I think you have a wonderful vision, and I do think that you're making huge strides forward for in creating the impact that you're after. What's your greatest fear?
Oh, that's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think I think fears exist in different aspects of our life. Um, I think if I was looking at it from the lens of work and advocacy, it is not creating those positive impacts and changes with
Mm.
what I am doing professionally and using both my professional and um, lived experience. I think that's probably a fear, and obviously, you know, not getting EthnoMobility where I want it to be.
Mm.
And a part of that would be not having that impact. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that sort of, shall we call it, a fear of being unfulfilled or a fear of
Mm.
failure is common to many of us, that we, perhaps go into a situation where we're feeling underconfident or isolated or nobody really
Mm.
understands. But, when we can work through the courage and the confidence and create the connection we're after, and be able to share our story and influence the change, then we feel certain and fulfilled and
Exactly.
confident and have created the impact that we're so wanting to make. Sara, thank you so much for sharing your voice and your vision today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and you're always receptive to my calls or my emails. And I really, as I said to you when we first met back in 2019, you inspire me all the time to keep things in perspective and to keep seeing how we can create change, and being visible, and your journey through that visibility is so inspiring. It's a blueprint for how personal truth can become public impact. To anyone who's listening, I hope this conversation reminds you too that your story holds power, and you can create shifts in perceptions, policies, and lives when you build the network that you need. Sara, how can people connect with you?
Through my Instagram, both No Legs, No Worries and EthnoMobility, and through my website, which is ethnomobility.com.au, and LinkedIn. As well.
Wonderful. And a perfect opportunity that you're looking for in the coming month would be?
Probably a speaking engagement to connect with organizations who are wanting to take that next step in creating that inclusion and belonging within their organization.
Thank you for all the great work that you do and for talking with me today. And for those listening, if you've enjoyed this episode, please create a ripple, share Sara's story, and you too can help to create the impact that she is driving. Take care and keep your conversations coming. Bye for now, Sara. Oh, sorry. No, so Sara, have you got a quote for us to finish off with?
Oh gosh, why didn't I? Ooh,
I
ooh,
can edit it. It's okay. Don't worry. Have a think.
I have to have a think of that one, I think.
Yeah.
Hmm. Let me just have a, okay, probably this one. A quote I would end on. sorry, a quote I'd end our conversation on would be, if you're at a table, at an event, at a gathering, look around and see who is not there and how you can make sure that they will be there at the next one.
Thank you for sharing. And I hope we get to have dinner again together soon,
Yes.
and that we can create ripples together. Thank you.